Hello everyone, it's Finale Moladina with RMI. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day today. So today in this environment where we're facing inflation, I just want to discuss 7 strategies that we've come up with to help cope with the inflationary environment. So out of these 7, the first one I wanted to touch on, of course, is reviewing your pricing strategy. And along with this, you got to analyze your cost situation too. So many of our clients who've been sitting down with me to review your year-end financials, you would have been hearing me talk about this as well. And basically the first thing we want to mention is review your margins. Are your margins consistent year over year? Many people realize that their margins have gone down in this inflationary environment because they're facing increased costs, but they haven't increased their own pricing accordingly. So very important, you need to be analyzing your costs and your revenues to be able to see is your margins being consistent, and if not, you got to really review your pricing and perhaps even adjust it. But with that on board, the second strategy I want to discuss is cash flow management. So of course, when costs go up, you need to be able to make sure that you have more cash available in order to cover your costs. So many times you'll hear me talk about saying, okay, make sure you're keeping 3 or 6 months cash aside, depending on the business. Well, if your costs have gone up, then what becomes really important is you got to have more cash available aside to be able to cover those expenses. So making sure you're paying attention to cash and managing that more carefully becomes very important. Third strategy that I want to talk about is reviewing employee compensation. So of course, many people who have employees are some of our biggest expenses. Well, in an inflationary environment, of course, we got to be taking care of our staff and looking at raises, but you have to make sure you're analyzing that, in a competitive landscape, what are other businesses doing? And secondly, at the same time, you want to analyze it in your own business. Can you afford to do that right now? Or is this something that maybe you have to wait a year, or maybe give it 6 months, or re-look at how you're doing some of your employee compensation? And it's time to even look at getting creative with it too. Are there other strategies you can do? Instead of bonuses, perhaps you can implement a different program or different elements to make sure you're keeping your staff happy. But at the same time, you don't want to get to the point where you're hurting or jeopardizing your business. The fourth strategy I want to touch on is investments. So of course, in an inflationary environment, what we're seeing out there is increased interest rates to help cope with this. And so what do we see on the flip side is perhaps better investment opportunities. So it's really important to review your investment strategies right now. Perhaps in the past, many people who've worked with me closely have said, well, there's no point of looking at GICs when they're only giving you 0.25% interest. But in today's environment, you can get 4 to 5%. Well, that's better than just keeping your cash in the bank and earning 0. So there's lots of different things you want to review your investment strategies around and see where you're putting your money and does it make sense in the current landscape and current environment. The next one we want to touch on, I've previously talked about this, but in this environment it's even more important, and that's budgeting and forecasting. So you've heard me previously talk about budgeting and why it's important. Well, when your costs are going up and your revenue might not be matching that, you want to be paying very close attention to budgeting and forecasting. You want to be able to see, hey, are you hitting your numbers? Are you hitting those margins? And you want to be able to adapt quicker, because if you have a budget and a forecast in place, you're monitoring your books on a regular basis, you're comparing your budget to actuals, you can really start to analyze and see and adjust quicker to the market in terms of if you have to increase prices or reduce costs in certain areas. A couple more. Number 6 would be market research. So a lot of people say, hey, make sure you know what your competitors are doing. But in this environment, it's even more crucial. Have your competitors increase prices? Because now you know you have that flexibility to do so. Have they stayed stagnant, and will they be able to survive? Then you have to relook at your environment. Or maybe they haven't increased their prices, but they're putting themselves in jeopardy. So it's very important to make sure you're on top of the market. It's a very quick changing landscape right now. And when that's the case, you want to make sure you're paying close attention to your competitors, your customers, and what are they doing and how can you deal with them accordingly. And the last one, because of a changing environment, you've got to stay adaptable and flexible. So it's more important you're staying on top of your numbers stay on top of your books, make sure you know what's happening regularly, and be ready to adapt. I know some of our clients have gone from annual price increases to now where they're doing it on a quarterly basis, or some of their vendors are doing that to them and they have to adapt accordingly. So it's very, very important that you're staying adaptable, staying flexible, and make sure you're paying very close attention to what's happening in the environment. So once again, it's our finale with RMI, and I hope everyone has a fantastic week. Thank you.